Let me ask you a question. Have you ever heard the voice of God? Seattle, 1990. A small, unruly group of 20-somethings are playing small gigs across the city. Their music is a lot different from what's been played before. It's earthy, it's harsh, yet under all of it, you can feel an unwavering passion that lives inside them. And what's crazy is, they aren't the only ones. Dozens of these young adults are starting bands across Seattle. It's a development that was unprecedented in the music world at the time. By the end of 1990, these groups would have no idea where they would be ending up, as global superstars unlike any other. But let's just stick to one for now. It makes it easier. We'll talk about the others later. These guys right here, temporarily, are known as Mookie Blaylock, named after the man himself, if you can't imagine. You probably know them better by their other name, though, which they swapped to just before releasing their biggest album ever, which you definitely have heard of. These guys are the founding members of Pearl Jam. Now, all that exposition was important to the video, I promise. It's actually kind of interesting when you go back and look at the history of these bands and how tight-knit they were coming out of Seattle, but that's not important to what we're talking about. What's even more interesting is the weird history behind these bands and some of the songs that they've made. And specifically today, we're going to be looking at one that involves Eddie Vedder and the woman who thought he was the second coming of Jesus Christ. Eddie Vedder, if you guys don't know, is the lead singer of Pearl Jam, but common media and whatever else now, you know who Eddie Vedder is. Pearl Jam really took off in 1992. I mean, they were playing massive venues. They have so many live albums where you can literally, or live shows literally, that you can look at, and it's just seas of people. It's crazy. With grunge being in like full swing, where you have Soundgarden, Nirvana, Alice in Chains, and Pearl Jam all doing live shows back to back to back. I mean, everything is insane. You can only imagine how bad Crazed fans were back then. A big problem that these bands dealt with was stalkers, or stalking, which is still a really big problem today. Stalking today can take a lot of different forms. And the words kind of changed a lot. You can like stalk people on social media, you can stalk them in real life, you can do like whatever, right? But back in the 90s, and specifically in this context, stalking involved literally showing up at the person's house. And you would think that most artists at this time would have that boundary, that professional boundary, where you wouldn't, let these people get too close to your life, like know where you live, know your phone number, blah, 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 all this stuff. Except for Eddie Vedder. For Eddie, it was really difficult for him to create those boundaries with his fans. He was always wanting to create a lasting, personal relationship with his fans that they could take with them outside of the show. Sometimes Eddie would even stay after on these shows just to talk with people for hours. And not with like bodyguards or anything like you kind of see today. If there is anyone that does that today, I can't even imagine. But Eddie would just go into the seas of people and just be like, hey, how are you? It's me, Eddie Vedder. No, but he would actually talk with these people. When I was researching this stuff, even like today, he still kind of does it. But I saw on some Reddit posts that people had talked about back in the day when Eddie would come to town, Pearl Jam would come to town. After the shows, he would just come and talk about local stuff or his family or how he's doing. And he would always try to be there for somebody else as well. And that's very important. He was about as down to earth as you could get. In fact, he stated multiple times that he hated being famous, or he hates being famous. He doesn't like all of the fame that comes with it. He just wants to be a normal person. And I feel like there's something you could probably learn there. As far as I can tell, he was just a genuine person, or still is. He's not, I keep saying he was, he's not dead. But he's just a genuine person, like actually. And unfortunately, that's kind of like a breeding ground for parasocial relationships. So you can kind of see where this is going. By far the most interesting stalker that Pearl Jam and specifically Eddie Vedder ever had was a girl that I'm going to call Sarah. Now, for the life of me, I cannot find this woman's name online. I have tried literally every source. I tried for 2 full days. I know, right? That's crazy. I tried for 2 full days. I could not find this woman's name at all. I have no idea. Actually, I kind of do have some idea. Can you stop knocking shit off my counter? I actually do have some idea that I'll talk about later, but anyway. So our main character here would be Sarah. There's not a lot of information about her. As far as I understand, was somewhere in her late 20s around this time. She unfortunately had been a victim of sexual assault and and I couldn't find out if it was technically clear enough if that action had caused her to get pregnant. But I do know that she is the mother to 2 children, and that's important. So Sarah, already dealing with some mental health issues, seems like she began to kind of lose reality just a little bit, and she really started to develop 2 big points in her brain. The first one is what I've already told you, that she believed that Eddie Vedder was the second coming of Jesus Christ, which, debatable. But the other reason is a little bit less cool, and she believed that Eddie Vedder was the father of her 2 children. Sarah was very dedicated to try and get to Vedder. She wanted to spend as much time with him and talk to him as much as she could. She wrote him a lot of letters. A lot. It got to the point where when the letters weren't working and Eddie wouldn't write her back, she decided to show up to his house because he was just giving that shit out like hotcakes, I guess. So let's recap a little bit on everything that we have, and then we'll move forward. So we know that Eddie Vedder was very open about a lot of stuff, where he lived, how to get in contact with him, and he's very personal with his fans. We also know that Sarah is trying to actively get to Vedder, believes that he's the second coming of Jesus, and wants to believe that her 2 kids are his children. There is another player that comes into this, and his name is Matt Lukin. Matt Lukin is the bassist for the band Mudhoney, or at least was. Mudhoney was another upcoming band from Seattle that didn't get as popular, but Matt Lukin is a really good friend of Eddie Vedder's, even to this day, and they've done interviews together and talked about a bunch of other stuff. It's pretty cool. See what I was talking about, everything being connected. But Matt Lukin is an important part to the story, because as Eddie was getting all of these envelopes from Sarah, and consistently, day after day, she would show up to his house, instead of choosing to file a restraining order or try and do anything, he just left. He just wouldn't be home. Instead of going to his house when he would be out on the days to dodge Sarah, he would go to Matt's house, and they would chill and do, I don't know, whatever 30-year-old men in the 90s do. You look so proper up there. And Eddie has come out and stated that he wasn't that far from his house. Like, Matt lived like right down the road. So he wasn't going far, but it was enough to get him away. Okay. But it was enough to get him away from Sarah, which is about to take a turn for the worst. So Sarah's getting pretty desperate at this point. She can't contact Eddie. She's showing up to his house, not seeing him. She probably knows he's dodging her. And unfortunately, her psyche is about to slip. I think it's important to mention that this happened and continued happening for almost 2 years. I think this started back as soon as Pearl Jam really began, sometime in 1992. And she continued this for 2 years, just about, so into 1994. And in 1994 is when it got a lot worse. So one day in 1994, Sarah was driving over to Eddie's house to hopefully see him. He was not home, as was the usual, but neither was his wife. So it seems like she had a slip behind the wheel, and instead of parking outside of Eddie's house, she decided to drive straight into it. So she got up to about 50 miles an hour and drove straight into the kitchen of their home. There was blood all over the inside of the truck. Sarah had suffered many fractures and bone breaks and was bleeding severely from her head. She spent days, if not weeks, if not months in the hospital to recover. But the most interesting part of all of this is that Eddie decided to not press charges against Sarah. In fact, Eddie did the most honorable thing that I think anyone could have done in that situation and tried not to talk about it as best he could. In fact, he did his best to wipe her name and her image from as many places as he could. And I think that's why I can't find her name. And truthfully, I really hope that's why I can't find her name, because that is very commendable and respectable of him to do. Now, if one of you wonderful people go out there and find it for me, that would be really funny. But as far as I understand, Eddie did his best and he succeeded in making sure that no one could find her name and trying to bury the story as best as he could. He only spoke about it a couple times, truthfully, and they were within interviews. He never did any one-offs talking specifically about it. I think one of the first times he ever mentioned it to the public was actually on I think it was either Italian or German interview thing in Europe that he was doing. And it's on a transcript of the talk show podcast that they did. And he talked about how gruesome it was and why he had to leave and all of these other things. And it's really interesting. I did forget to mention this earlier when talking about the aftermath, but Eddie Vedder's then wife, Beth Liebsing, went to Pearl Jam's record label and made them pay not only to fix the wall, but to put up a fence and have armed security around the house at all times. Which is crazy. Good on you, girl. You make that shit happen. Regardless, that's not the end of the story. About a year or two later, Pearl Jam would be working on their newest album, No Code, which was set to release in August of 1996. And they actually performed a couple songs at the Moore Theater in Seattle live on February 5th of 1995. And one of the songs that they played that night was known as Lukin. Lukin, as you can imagine, was named after Matt Lukin, his friend who had the house that he would go to that was the bassist of Mudhoney. Now, I'm not going to read the lyrics out verbatim of the song because they're kind of vulgar, but in the song, he talks about how Sarah believed him to be the father of her two children, and talks about how he would go to Matt's house and go to his fridge, and then he would realize that life was worth living when he would go to the fridge. Fire. He also says that apparently he heard that she was going to buy a firearm and try and do whatever with him. But I didn't see anything about that happening, so I don't know. Lukin is a lot different from a lot of songs on the album. The album itself is very experimental. It was one of the more experimental albums that Pearl Jam did at the time. It's only like 60 seconds. It's the shortest, one of the shortest songs. I think it is the shortest song that Pearl Jam has ever made. And it's very interesting to think that this story has just been forgotten. It kind of makes you wonder if the song was a little bit more popular, if anything really would have come of it. You know, if anyone would know this better or whatever. But it seems like it was just forgotten. And it's probably because it's really hard to understand the song. But then again, you could also make the same argument for every single Pearl Jam song. So I don't know. I think it's just a very interesting time in music history. It's something that not a lot of people talk about. I've said that like 8 times. But it isn't. And I think it's cool to kind of look back on these moments in history, music history, especially 90s grunge music history. There's a lot of history there. History. I don't know. I'm kind of just rambling at this point, but truthfully, you should go look at the song. I'll link it in the description of this video, and you should go through the lyrics. It's cool. I like it. You might like it too. Thanks for watching.